this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bankers in charge? But aren't we all just living and dying for what the central banks do?
Of course we are. We are absolutely slaves to central banks.
You people want to have a full takeover of America when you've already seized its institutions. You want to shut down free speech. We're not flat-footed. We warned everybody. Patriots 60 years ago got the word out. And now we held your system back for so long, it finally is getting here. You're behind schedule, but people are now awake and were warned that you were coming and what your system would be. People like Ron Paul 30, 40 years ago, people like, oh, it's just amazing. People like Barry Goldwater 50 years ago, they were so on target. And we stand on their shoulders today. This is just an incredible time. So spread the word. People are ready to wake up to the fact that we have an occupied government of takeover artists. And we're going to restore our republic if we understand these people are illegitimate, break the trance, and take our republic back. Their takeover was so big and so over the top, that was its advantage because it was just so incredible. But once the hoax that it doesn't exist is gone, it's game over. Infowars.com is just one key outpost in this fight. Please intensify our efforts against the globalists, restore our republic, and free the world from the hands of the New World Order.
All right, that's Alex Jones' report about Donald Trump. We're going to be talking to one of the nominees for the Libertarian Party nomination coming up at the bottom of the hour, John McAfee. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. In the next segment, we're going to be joined by John McAfee, security expert, presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. They're going to begin their convention tomorrow. They will choose a nominee over this weekend. And I want to ask John McAfee questions about a wide variety of issues when he joins us in the next segment. But one of the key things that I want you to understand is just how much not only the Libertarian Party needs John McAfee, but how much America needs his voice in this discussion. We are seeing very disruptive technologies coming at us very quickly, growing so quickly that most of us don't really understand what's going on with it. And we don't understand the implications of it. Let me explain this to you. I teased this a little bit in the very first segment. A car's computer can fingerprint you in minutes based on how you drive. This is an article from Wired Magazine today. You know, they're able to identify you by your walk. Well, how about the way you drive? They say the way you drive is surprisingly unique. Automobiles have become data harvesting mobile computers. Yes, you need to understand that. The data collected by your car, whether you own it or whether you rent it or whether you borrow it, can probably identify you based on that driving style after as little as just a few minutes behind the wheel. This is a study done by a group called Privacy Enhancing Technology Symposium. They're going to present it in Germany this July. I'm sorry, that's the symposium where they're going to present the study. The study was done by the University of Washington and California at San Diego. They say they can fingerprint drivers based only on the data they collect from internal computer network of the vehicle their test subjects were driving. This is what's known as the car's CAN bus, C-A-N bus, okay? They say the data collected from a car's brake pedal alone, the brake pedal alone, can identify you. And they did this with 15 individuals, and they can identify you 90% of the time after just monitoring the way you apply the brakes for 15 minutes. If they're given 90 minutes to watch the way you drive, they can identify you fully 100% of the time. Think about that. Just 90 minutes, they can identify everybody after 90 minutes of watching the way they apply the brake pedals. Now, here's the implication of this. The researchers argue that the ability to pinpoint could have unexpected privacy implications. Everything from letting insurance companies punish the drivers who loan their cars to their teenage kids to confirming the identity of a driver who violated traffic laws or who caused a collision. But the fingerprinting study, they say, should serve as a more general warning to car owners about the sensitivity of data that travels across their vehicle's internal networks. Those networks are not going to remain internal much longer. The Department of Transportation, the Federal Department of Transportation, is already working on standards that they're going to mandate on cars. These standards will be identified later this year in the fall. Vehicle-to-vehicle communications, where the cars will be talking to each other. But those cars will soon be talking to the infrastructure. It's called vehicle-to-infrastructure, V2I. At that point, they're going to be talking directly to your government regulators, your government minders, your government masters, because that's what they will turn into. They say the same data that tells the insurance company when you've let your 16-year-old kid take the car to the prom might easily be used to identify drunk driving or a medical condition that's altered someone's driving ability. They say drivers are increasingly sending that sensitive data to the cloud with gadgets like Hum, Venly, Automatic, and Zuby. designed to be plugged into the car's CAN network via a port under the vehicle's dashboard. Other OBD2 devices are being offered by insurance companies like Progressive and Metromile. That's where they give you the little dongle thing that you stick in and say, well, we'll give you lower insurance rates. Yeah, we'll see how long that lasts. Understand that cars like Tesla are uploading this data right now automatically. For what purpose? How will this be used? How will this be misused? I reported yesterday about how the feds are flashing their badges on auto data. This is a report from Automotive News. They said back in February, before all this dispute that John McAfee got involved in between Apple and the FBI, demanding the information from these San Bernardino shooters' phones, before that happened, they called all these automotive executives into Quantico, Virginia to talk to the FBI, their headquarters, and said, we want you to work with us. And these people were very uncomfortable with this, so much so that they contacted Automotive News and said anonymously, I feel very uncomfortable with where we're at. One industry official said, there's a lot of pressure on the auto industry to do a better job with security. At the same time, we're being told by the government, you guys are getting better at security, and that's messing us up. They don't want security. They want to know everything about you. This is a big brother government. And here's the bottom line, folks. They spelled out in this article. Your car essentially knows where you sleep, where you work, where you eat, where your kids go to school, where you go to church, if you're having an affair, you name it. Hey guys, there are multiple ways. It's not just your phone, it's your car, all these different ways that the government has of tracking you. And we've had people like James Clapper say, oh, we're not recording your phone calls, we're just looking at your metadata. That's how they get you. That's how they monitor and control you and profile you. And it can be a very dangerous thing if it generates a false positive and you get SWAT teamed or you get identified as a terrorist by these people because they don't like your political views. They know your political views. It's called human intelligence, okay? It's called geointelligence. It's called activity-based intelligence. And this is a broad spectrum. If we don't get control of this politically, it will control us. Stay with us. We'll be right back with John McAfee. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. In this segment, we're going to be talking to John McAfee. We haven't established connection with him just yet. We're having a little bit of trouble with the electronics communication with Skype. But of course, the government's not having too much problems with that. This is very key because we've got the Libertarian Nomination Convention going on this weekend, beginning tomorrow. And of course, we're seeing a spike with the Libertarian Party. Typically last year, they were getting about 100 new members a month. It was reported by The Hill that in January, they got 148, went up to 323 in February, March, 706, April, 1,293. So 13 times the amount that they were getting average on a month preceding year. And that's just in the first 3 weeks of May. Now, what does the Libertarian Party have? It has 50 state ballot access. That's something that is very difficult to do, but they've been able to achieve that. And the even more difficult thing to do, because the corruption, is to get access to the debates. But that's something that will have to be addressed on a different issue. The Libertarian Party is a factor because it does have 50 state ballot access. And let me introduce John here a little bit. I think this op-ed piece that he wrote for Newsweek back at the beginning of May was very good. He says, I might be a political hotshot, but I'm not Charlie Sheen. He said he's done a lot of things in his life. And of course, his biography here, we've got he was employed beginning as a NASA programmer from 68 to 70. From there, he went to Xerox as an operating systems architect. Then in 87, he founded the company that is named after him, McAfee, the computer antivirus company. He sold that for a lot of money. In 1989, he went to Lockheed, 1989, he quit Lockheed. He began working full-time for his company and eventually sold that. And then he, as recently as 2010, he started a new venture in the field of bacterial quorum sensing, whatever that is. We won't get into that kind of detail in the weeds, but you can find him on his website at bealibertarian.com, bealibertarian.com. Now, he points out, he says, I'm familiar with business, having started 17 in my life, almost all successful. One of them now worth more than $1 billion. The fourth company I founded, McAfee, was sold to Intel for more than $7 billion a few years ago. I've started many companies now worth more than $100 million, so I know a little bit about business. McAfee went on to say, corporate competition is fierce. Many view it as economic warfare. But he says politics is something unique. And so he talks about how recently he's experienced mudslinging, where someone attacked him by comparing him to Charlie Sheen, unflatteringly. He says he admires Charlie Sheen as an actor. He doesn't make any judgments about his reported use of drugs or his proclivity for prostitutes. He says, I'm a libertarian after all. Libertarians believe no one should live one's life, that everyone should live their life as they please, provided they harm no one else. He says, as to his alleged craziness, I don't know him personally, but as for me, I've written over 100 articles in the past 3 years for International Business Times, Business Insider, Digital Trends, SiliconANGLE, Forbes, and Newsweek. If any of that sounds crazy, then perhaps I am. Joining us now is John McAfee. Welcome, Mr. McAfee.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
I'm very interested to hear your voice. I think the Libertarian Party needs your voice. I think America needs your voice in the discussion. We are threatened with a lot of vital issues. I think the border issues, the trade issues that we see that Donald Trump has tapped into, I think those are vital issues. But there's another vital issue that nobody is talking about, and that is the big brother aspect of massive surveillance. And there's many other issues that I don't really see candidates like Gary Johnson addressing. 4 years ago, when he was running, he basically focused his campaign on government redefining marriage, on being pro-abortion, and on pot legalization, which is fine, except that those first two things are not even necessarily something that all libertarians agree on. We had pro-life libertarians when I was in the Libertarian Party. A lot of people don't believe that the government should have any role in defining marriage. And when it comes to pot legalization, that's fine, but I think we need to focus on the broader problems of drug prohibition in general. Then I was very disturbed to see that he's picking William Weld, a guy who has supported assault weapon bans. He has supported other gun control measures. He supported the Iraq War 10 months after the invasion. He's failed to oppose the Patriot Act. As a matter of fact, he worked as a DEA enforcer for Ed Meese. And this is a guy who gave us a civil asset forfeiture. Now, he eventually forced Ed Meese out for personal corruption charges, but he should have forced him into jail for giving us something like civil asset forfeiture. So I'm very disturbed to see the Libertarian Party moving in the direction of having these career politicians, which is what Gary Johnson and William Weld are, in my opinion. I think they need to be brought into the 21st century with issues like you're addressing. Talk to us about the vitality of cybersecurity and what we need to do to protect us from the government.
Well, with your permission, sir, I'd like to talk about something far more important.
Sure.
We're talking about issues, but there's an issue that absolutely no one has addressed, and that is when Dwight Eisenhower left office in the 50s, he warned us about something called the military-industrial complex. That connection between government and industry, which would only cause greater power in both of those. Gary Johnson talks about presidential debates. If we don't get into the debate, we're lost, so he's suing the debate commission. Well, we know that's not going to go to court until after the election. We know how the court process works, so it's utter nonsense. At the Las Vegas debate that Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller put together, I did the debate like everybody else. In my closing statement, I got up and said, what you have watched is utter, complete nonsense, fabricated by the media in the 60s and perpetrated by the media for the media. And let me explain. What do you have in a presidential debate? You have opening statements and closing statements written by speech writers, not the candidate himself. You have a candidate that has been coached by dozens
As a matter of fact, I think we lost transmission there for a moment. One of the founders of the Libertarian Party was a speechwriter for Goldwater, who had that famous comment, extremism in defense of liberty is no vice, and moderation in defense of justice is no virtue, if I got that correct. I may not have gotten that exactly right, but you're exactly right. And, so it's speechwriters.
So the point is, by buying into this media industry government complex, we're learn. If in fact we elect these candidates, we should move the speechwriter and his coaches into the Oval Office and put the candidate out. We know nothing.
I liked Carl Hess even better than Barry Goldwater when I met him.
So I made the comment in my closing statement, I would sign a form today with every media outlet giving them the right to break into my house at 6 o'clock in the morning, film me in bed when I have a hangover, or come in when I'm arguing with my wife or scolding the dog. Wouldn't you learn more? No, this debate structure, 2 minutes opening statement, 45-second response, et cetera, is nonsense structured by the media with their gaps for commercials. And it tells us nothing about the candidates. The political process in America is broken, pure and simple.